Welcome to Executives at the Edge, a podcast brought to you by MEF. I'm your host, Pascal Menezes. Join me as we explore thought-provoking perspectives from the leaders and changemakers who are propelling enterprise digital transformation forward. I am so excited to have Jeremy Villalobos, COO from Orchest. And they basically are a connectivity platform, highly automated, orchestratable. And Jeremy, welcome to the show of Executives at the Edge. And I'm really excited about this episode. Tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit more about Orchest.
Thank you, Pascal. Happy to be here. I'm Jeremy Villalobos, Chief Operating Officer for Orchest, previously known as Gold Connect. We're a connectivity service provider in Latin America. Basically, we're supporting global carriers through the wholesale business from Mexico all the way down to Chile and Argentina, presence in every country. And what makes us different is our automation business model. We created a platform, which is Orchest LATAM. And basically, our clients are able to go into the platform, quote, perform feasibility analysis on the last mile, basically quote all the suite of connectivity services from Ethernet, MPLS, dedicated internet access, Cloud Connect, DC Express, which is a on-demand capacity for the first time available in Latin America, and many more features, installation, monitoring of the services in real time, tech support. So basically, we're disrupting the traditional standards in Latin America from a very old, not old, but I will say very slow processes to a more efficient, leaner, and transparent support into the clients.
So basically, your other providers that want to get to LATAM come to you.
Exactly.
And then you represent what's available in that region.
That's correct.
Because I like to aggregate all the different other operators, get price quotes, what kind of services are available and things like that.
That's correct. We have our own network. We have more than 75 POPs throughout the region.
Wow.
We have more than 19 subsea cables interconnected to our network because of diversity into the network. We want to provide, we have multiple POPs in every single country for diversity. So we basically want to give them the menu of options for them to choose. We automated through our platform more than 157 carriers from Latin America that are interconnected with us locally. So basically, when we perform the technical feasibility analysis, we can tell the client which vendors go into the building. The platform doesn't discriminate if we're using our network or if we're using a third party. The objective is to find 100% of the time a solution for our clients.
That is really incredible. That is really exceptional because it's really needed, especially in LATAM, where there's so many operators and so many possibilities and variables. That's awesome. So look, what are some of the biggest challenges in LATAM today operating network, and what are the roles of automation and APIs to resolve some of them?
That's a great question because we have been embracing automation for the last 4 years, and we're running into the issue that it's not sustainable in time to be the only ones embracing automation in Latin America. Unfortunately, automation adoption in LATAM is very low. I will say, I don't know, about 1% of the carriers are embracing or utilizing some form of API in the region. And for us to be automating our partners' network data infrastructure, you have to refresh that data every once in a while. You know, right now we have 157. We may go to 300, 400. You know, we're not stopping adding new carriers. So to refresh that data is not sustainable in time. You know, you're going to run into discrepancies eventually. So the final goal is for all these carriers to embrace automation, treat their data independently, and then we API with each other. So instead of me taking care of 300, 400 different network data, because at the end of the day, it's about treating the data. So the final objective is to have more carriers embracing automation where we can API with each other, and then everyone is taking care of their own data.
Like a federation.
Exactly.
Versus right now you're an aggregator to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest challenges that I see for the LATAM carriers is many of them 20 plus years embracing, they had legacy systems in place When you talk about shifting your business model into automation, you gotta also adopt more efficient technologies to run your business. So to migrate all these legacy systems into more linear technologies is a huge challenge for these companies. So they're in like hitting a wall where even if they wanted to, it's a big challenge for them. And that's where I'm seeing the friction or the pushback from many carriers to fully embrace automation. Of course, they can do API and have some price lists and basic data, but at the end of the day, that's not what we're aiming for in the long term. That's a short-term solution. And I believe a new generation of carriers are being born, just like we are. Yes, we are 20 years old in the industry, but we had the chance to reinvent ourselves 2 years ago. So it was a perfect opportunity for us to say, okay, this is a scratch. Let's start from zero. Let's build up the business the way we should do it, considering all the available technologies that we have today.
And how's that working?
Amazing. We're streamlining all the business processes. We remove all the bottlenecks. In sales in our business, 48% of their time they're spending introducing opportunities on a CRM, on the sales teams. Sales engineers are working, performing technical feasibility analysis into what is feasible or not into a building. Sales engineers, they should be working on creating solutions, creating topologies, brainstorming new innovative solutions for the clients. Sales should be selling, talking to clients. They shouldn't be spending 48% of their time into a CRM, and that's a reality for every telco in our industry.
Wow.
So when you embrace automation, you remove bottlenecks, and your organization is becoming more efficient, and they're focusing on the real aspects of the business.
So why is automation only 1% in the region?
I will say, I will go back to the point that I was mentioning, the legacy systems. You got big carriers that have been dominating the LATAM region for a long time. And when you see the customer experience, customers are waiting months for a quotation. Installation process goes 120 days.
That's crazy.
We're not there. That's in the past, Customers are begging, they're asking for an extremely good customer experience, and automation is the only way to achieve that.
Absolutely, 100%. So, hey, change the topic. There seems to be a lot of talk about network as a service. And, we at MEF are also launching out a network as a service blueprint. We've talked about this. And so how do you see NAS having a big impact in LATAM?
So NAS, I will say it's halfway in LATAM. It's been adopted very well in other regions like Europe, the US, obviously, because automation is more developed than in our region. But we recently, for example, launched on-demand capacity between data centers in the region. The objective is to continue offering, those on-demand services that basically are flexible in terms of contract. There is not a contract involved, connectivity to the cloud. So we're seeing more and more those type of solutions available in the LATAM market. But again, you go back to automation because NAS is 100% automation.
Yeah, 100%.
It's SDN. You gotta have a SDN solution in place over your network. You gotta have different components that basically enable you to offer those type of solutions. So NAS covers multiple aspects. It's not just network as a service. Just like the standard from MEF clearly explain it, but as we start growing the automation adoption into the region, you're going to see more players moving into NAS. We're seeing players from other regions coming into LATAM offering those solutions. But at the same, but also it's important to keep those solutions within LATAM. For example, the cloud connectivity, it's important that we're connecting the clients to the hubs in Latin America. So you need expertise from LATAM in order to make that happen, where you have better latency to the clients and so on. So yes, it's good that other players from other regions are coming into LATAM with that value proposition, because they're pushing the envelope in the region. But at the end of the day, it's about the LATAM players, jumping on board, understanding the final goal and the benefit for the business, and at the end of the day, it's about the better customer experience.
Yeah. So just to confirm, network as a service, you said on demand, you mean mainly the ability to scale up and down on demand the network bandwidth?
Yes, that's correct.
But what we're talking about in MEF is also adding security as part of that.
That's
Do
correct.
you also mean part of the security or just the network?
I mean part of the security. The final goal is to have everything on one shop. You're seeing independent players tackling a single aspect of the solution. So the end goal is to have that one-stop shop where clients can basically tackle all the different needs into one single service provider.
Got it. So talking about NAS and automation as being the must-have, well, what is important for the future of LATAM region? We already kind of touched it a little bit, but what do you think is the role of MEF to play in this transformation? In this region specifically?
I believe MEF is a perfect platform, because MEF is a neutral organization. You guys are creating standards. MEF plays a fundamental role in our industry, not only for Europe, the US, but I believe for the future of Latin America. The reason we joined MEF and I'm personally involved with MEF is because I believe the LATAM region needs a big push. It's not a small push; it's a big push.
Big push.
So
yeah, for sure.
I'm aiming to see more LATAM players joining MEF. It's not about us being the only ones. Participating in all these projects. Envisioning the future of LATAM if we don't have more players from the business side getting involved with MEF. It's good to see some technical guys joining the different sessions, but it's about the business. Business is the one that really drive forward, the decisions on their particular organizations. So my personal goal is to really help MEF, increase the level of service providers from LATAM participating in MEF, understanding the different options available because, maybe they think that MEF is just API, but there's so many other things that they can understand. And actually the right players are within MEF to make those decisions and make them happen through the way. If you need, a blockchain player, you got 3 and 4 and different guys to choose in here. So it's not only about what you guys can offer, but also the community within MEF to really take any organization to the next level and guide them through the right path to embrace automation.
And you actually, for that, you've taken on the co-chair role of the automation part of the committees in MEF.
That's correct.
So part of your vision and your mission is to change the region to be highly automated.
That's correct.
And it probably seems like a passion of yours.
It is. I know it's a long-term goal, but we need a starting point. And I believe that starting point was, when we started pushing LATAM, we had the Miami members meeting, where we did some focus on the LATAM region. and I'm seeing more people understanding from LATAM what we're trying to accomplish with the MEF, because they're seeing what we're doing. From us, we gotta keep making noise on everything, the results, the possibilities, how the customers are benefiting from this. At the end of the day, I don't want to be the only one. Yes, I'm 4 years ahead of everyone else, but at the end of the day, it's about everyone having their own automated business because that's the future. It's not sustainable to be performing the way we are, with our clients.
However, I was in the region in a conference at Mexico Connect, and I've also talked to a lot of LATAM operators, and I've talked to a lot of South, Asian operators, and there is a sense of mentality that I can just use people to automate. Like, in other words, it's obviously not correct, but it's so inexpensive that for provisioning and so on, people can do that, through traditional CLIs and scripts. Obviously, it's an old school thinking, but they just think from a cost point of view, why should I invest all of this money in automation when I can just continue using the old process of people? What's your thoughts on that? Is that just a an old school thinking and not understanding that the world of automation and cloud go together? And
I believe it's a little bit of denial and some unknown territory when you're talking about automation. I believe digital transformation, because at the end of the day, automation is digital transformation. You need to transform your business, change the way you're doing things, and when they think about changing their business 100%, they think like, I'm just gonna go crazy, and how are we gonna do this? So it is important to explain that this digital transformation doesn't need to be done at once. It's just starting by departments, by business processes. Maybe tackle a specific area of the business where you're identifying incredible bottlenecks on the business. Fix that, see the benefits, and then move on and evolve your business little by little, and don't think about digital transformation like a massive change into the organization that you need to perform in 1 year. No, it has to be a step by step, learning curve, understanding, teaching the organization. And when the moment you realize you have a 50% transformation of your business, with that mentality, because you're understanding, you're walking the path with your teams, and they are understanding what needs to be done and the benefits. So a transformation is needed, and those old school processes is just, I believe, in my opinion, is a denial. And but that's why we need to keep pushing the message and the benefits of what's been done, why are we getting these results. So it's evangelizing, the what can be done in a different way.
But did you build your own business systems and BSS systems and orchestration system on your own, or did you go through a third-party vendor? And
so we started with third parties because we didn't want to reinvent the wheel in Latin America.
Yeah.
But we understood that the wheel didn't exist in Latin America, because many of these tasks that we wanted to accomplish, no one was doing it before. Like, for example, performing a technical feasibility analysis on a last mile. We needed to create an algorithm using different aspects of data, utilizing artificial intelligence, big data to process the incredible amount of data that we have in the back. And at the end of the day, no one was doing that, not even in Europe and the US. And the problem with Latin America is that you got different infrastructures per country, you got different regulations, you got different way of doing things. So and LATAM was always, that subject to feasibility analysis, and then from that you can go 3 months later. So we wanted to tackle that. So we created a team of developers, and we started creating these technologies. It took us 4 years. It didn't happen from 2 months. It was a lot of walls hitting, a lot of frustration, but we were determined, to find a solution to a problem that we knew it needed a solution. So
interesting, very interesting.
And then we jump into the installation process. We basically show the installation process to the client like they order a pizza. Once the installation is done, they can click on each one of the tasks associated to installation. Then the service goes into production, and then clients can see the performance of their services in real time. They can see the traffic, the latency, everything associated to the service. If something goes wrong, the platform sends an alarm detecting abnormal behavior on the traffic. Something goes wrong, a ticket is automatically open. So we were able to automate the entire customer experience from the quoting all the way to the tech support. And it was by, jumping one aspect at a time. We started with the quoting. We made it. Let's automate the installation process. We did it. Now I want to show the performance of the service to our clients. So it's not like we did, okay, we're going to do all these. No, we went one by one, and now we have a fully automated business.
Yeah, and I think that's really what a lot of the providers are struggling with is, how do I get on the journey? How do I chunk it down? And I think that's really what the education has to be about. But change the topic. How do you see SASE developing the LATAM? I mean, SASE is really hot. Everybody's talking about it. So that the cybersecurity we talked about, that NAS part to it, How do you think SASE and the LATAM region will play out?
So I see LATAM. Well, LATAM is always 5 years delay. I will say 5 to 6 years delay from everyone else. SASE is something that is being adopted in the US, in Europe. LATAM is like watching what's happening. You still don't see any zero trust rules, security rules on the LATAM region. You still see players adopting SD-WAN. A lot of MPLS is still being deployed in Latin America. So you got to understand also what's happening in Latin America before we think about SASE, because it's like they are still walking the old path. MPLS is still being deployed in Latin America. That's SD-WAN is still, some customers are deploying, they're testing how the waters work in Latin America, because again, we go back to the different infrastructures availability that you got in LATAM. Obviously, and then you have different profiles of clients. You got the big enterprises, the MNCs that are already adopting SASE in other regions. So they say, okay, why not? Let's do the same in LATAM. But then you have the local, the MNCs, the LATAM MNCs, their presence is within Latin America. They don't know about the technology. They don't know about the limits between the old legacy and the new opportunities that you can do through SASE. So it's interesting times. I believe LATAM is watching the success stories, the use case from other regions, and see how that fits into the LATAM model. We're definitely evaluating SASE in our offering. We want to be ready when LATAM is ready. And it's one of the things that we're evaluating through MEF, because, we saw all the different players that are working SASE successfully, and we're talking to them to see how we can bring those, use cases into the Latin American region.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I think it's really, really needed as cybersecurity continues to be very top of mind of everybody. Cybercrime is reading somewhere it's going to go to $15 trillion over the next 5 or 7 years it's a massive economy. And, I think cloud security is the answer. Because people can work from anywhere, and they're going to have to work from anywhere. You're going to have to secure not just the perimeters in your buildings, but wherever you go. So
yeah. But just to give you an idea, I did the cloud data center strategy for a carrier in LATAM. That was 5 years ago, and we were basically offering, cloud. First they thought it was really in the clouds. Second, they thought that if you have the server under your desk and you can see the blink light, they thought it was secure, because it was here. No one's going to take it from me. So that's the level of understanding of the region of this type of technology. That was 5 years ago with cloud. So imagine all these technicalities that we're talking about SASE and everything, and the scope of SASE. We gotta be patient with the LATAM region on that aspect.
Well, I think it's not just LATAM; it's many other parts of the world is suffering from this technology wave that is so fast. It's just mind blowing how fast these technology waves come in, and it's just hard to grapple with because everything's virtualized now, and it's all interconnected in some way, and automation and APIs and software, and it's not the old days where it's just transport.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Anyways, look, there's a lot of talk about blockchain. So Orchest is involved in multiple initiatives around, MEF's blockchain initiatives that we're working on. What role do you see blockchain playing in the industry?
So we see blockchain has the new bridge into new possibilities for our industry. We're actually working on a project called Wolftown, which is for SLA assurance. Blockchain, smart contracts within blockchain plays a huge role. You can have multiple parties agreeing on specific terms, and then the blockchain basically enforce those agreements. In the wholesale business, we got the SLAs. In my organization, when we deal with a credit, it's because we got a credit request from our clients. So I got to do a credit request with my vendor. So I asked my team, how many credit requests are we doing proactively without knowing that our clients are asking for it? There were 0. So how much money are we leaving on the table because we're not asking for credit requests on when services are not performing according to SLA. How much can we really enforce and raise the bar of service quality assurance? Because when you do SLA assurance, you're also doing service quality verification. So you're raising also the bar of the quality of the services, But if you're not getting credit requests, you're basically on a comfort zone where, I don't need to fix anything. Everything is working fine. But, by automating basically the SLA assurance, where you can get a credit report of all the services that didn't perform according to the SLA, and then you can send that to the vendor. So the ultimate goal is to have multiple parties involved in the project. Right now, we're collaborating with Sparkle. We buy from Sparkle, so there is a use case that we can utilize to see how it works. But the final goal is to have multiple vendors, involved within the network where we can enforce SLA with each other. Because at the end of the day, we do business with PCCW, with Colt, Sparkle, most of the MEF members, we do business with each other. So what if we are interacting within the blockchain, to enforce each other's SLA and make sure that we are basically keeping each other's accountable on what we agree that our services will perform on a specific time frame. And another problem with that is that all these SLA enforcement is being done manually. So how much human resources are we dedicating for this? For me, we're not a thousands employee company, but I know the big guys, imagine how much work that requires, on a manual work to be one by one, okay, 99.5, so okay, it's 5% of it's an incredible amount of work. That's why no one is doing it, because it's a lot of work. So if we are able to automate that aspect of the business, we can dedicate the human resources into more important aspect of the business, and then we can keep accountable each other's in terms of the performance of the network. Also, we're working with ITN, identity verification, which is important too. It goes back to the smart contract. You wanna make sure that the identities within the smart contracts are validated within the network. So there are very good use cases going on in MEF. Right now, they're showcase, but the objective is to make them a reality in the long term and bring on more players into the initiative.
Yeah, and specifically around SLA, it's a very good use case. I think also the ability to be able to do invoicing and settlements also very important, because as you go to on-demand services, you want to be able to change resources, and that's going to take more than, to change the resources, you're going to have a single source of truth that this happened and build upon it versus auditing how they do it today.
Yeah.
Because today, they just contract a circuit per month, and that's it. But if you try to change that, it's hard to settle on that. But I think the SLA one is a pretty low-hanging fruit.
Mm.
And I think for that, though, I think the MEF interlude APIs of the work that the SOMA is working on, Service OEM, will have to play into that.
Yeah.
Because you'll have to feed the Service OEM parts into the blockchain through the smart contract to look at how well things are performing, don't you think?
Yeah, 100%. And going back to what you mentioned before about the resources, it's important for people to understand that automation, blockchain, is not to remove humans from the equation. It's to make those humans more efficient on what they do.
I totally agree, 100%.
It's about removing bottlenecks. It's about removing inefficient work, administrative work. We're removing all that, and we're giving efficiency and focus to the organization on aspects that really need the human attention. I always tell our clients, we didn't create this platform to remove the human interaction. It's to make that interaction more efficient and to allow each one of the members of our organization to focus on the real work that they need to do.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, because you saw some layoffs with, Microsoft and Amazon and Google. And Google and Microsoft said, hey, they're focusing more to AI. And so they didn't remove any people from the cloud side. If you look at it, it's mainly from other areas that were very manually oriented.
Mm.
And now they can use AI to solve them. But I think the answer is, it's not removing people by machines. It's putting machines to automate and get more optimization, better experiences, but then taking those people and using them in more efficient ways. That's your point.
It's about removing the manual work.
Yeah, and where, it's like the factory line assembler, those are gone now, that machine. But you take those people and you train them in other areas that they're really going to be making more money at and much more higher skills.
Exactly.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you have the productivity on your organization goes off the roof.
Exactly. And the skill set increases with your workforce, which is critical.
And people is happy.
Yeah, exactly.
No one wants to be, connected to a computer doing administrative work.
Of course.
It's just time consuming, they get frustrated, because it's day after day after day after day, and they get burned out. So
absolutely. Well, Jeremy, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and always very grateful for all your contributions and for the work you lead in our automation committee called our LSO committee. So very grateful you're co-chairing that, and it's been very educational and informative for me. I'm sure to our listeners too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Pascal. Thank you for having me.